Came on. My name is Dr. Dara Rampasad, and I am the proud owner and operator of BluePaz First Responder Services. The Trauma Behind the Badge is a segment that was started, and we have some of the core people here. Chris Fields, Chris Scallon couldn't make it with us today. Doug Monda should be on here shortly. And so Raul and Patrick and Rich, we all have conversations every Friday on different aspects of things that affect first responders. And so today I really wanted to put this panel before this group so we can have a conversation and learn from each on everybody's experiences here. So let's get Raul up, and Rich is coming up here. Jen could probably reach out to Doug for me and see if he's having any issues logging in. And what I'd like for us to do is kind of where I want to hear everybody's story. Hey, there's Doug. What's up, brother? I want to make sure everybody has a chance to tell us their perspective and their story of the things that they've experienced and been part of in their jobs. So let's run with this. I want to start with Chris Fields, because you're in my top left corner of my screen, buddy. And get a chance for you to talk about your experience and what sorts of things have affected you on your job, and just take it away. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Doc. And by the way, I've been watching all day. What an awesome program so far. Hope we can keep up the good work here. Yeah, my name is Chris Fields. I've worked for the Oklahoma City Fire Department for 31 years. Was a first responder the day of the Oklahoma City bombing. After the bombing and some, all the rescue efforts down there, several years later, I started experiencing, I had a trigger, which of course back then I didn't know what a trigger was. I was working around some concrete and it started raining, and I caught the smell of wet concrete dust, which took me back to the day of the bombing, because it rained that evening when we were still doing recovery mode. So after that's when I noticed I started to isolate myself a little more bouts of depression, anxiety, quick temper, and things just started spiraling out of control. I'm trying to get through this so everybody can have a chance here. So what happened to me was when I got to the bottom was when I thought I didn't need to be here anymore and tried to end it. And what I discovered most, though, when I finally reached out for the help, the most important thing I noticed was the same people that I was pushing away the entire time that wanted to help me were the first ones there reaching out when I finally reached out for help to help me. And what I thought I was going to go in and address just some of these bombing issues, I thought was the main deal. I discovered that I opened the floodgates for that entire career of things that I thought I had handled and processed, and found out that a lot of them I hadn't dealt with in the right way. I dealt with them how we knew as first responders back then, firefighters, cops, we hug it out, we laugh a little bit, we cry a little bit, we tell stories, we get lost in our dark humor, which is good, it's necessary as a filter, but some of us think that's the healing we need, and that's the way we talk it out. So anyway, but after years of counseling and doing the right things and working through it, I'm here today, and I'm blessed that I get to have an opportunity to be on programs like this and work with guys that are on here, like Raul and Doug and Rich and Patrick Dragon, and of course, like I said, Scallon couldn't make it. I'm just blessed beyond measure to be able to do this, and I do it to say it doesn't have to get to that point to where you're at the bottom before you reach out. We all know ourselves. You get to know yourself. You see signs, and that's the time to reach out.
Thanks, Chris. That's a great start. Patrick, how about you go next, sir?
Hello, everyone. A little bit about myself, Patrick Dragon. I was a Connecticut State Trooper for 20 years. I retired back in 2018. Currently serving as Deputy Chief of East Brooklyn Fire Department and working for a small PD dispatch. And I became involved in this through my involvement with the Sandy Hook school shooting, being on the initial entry team, seeing the unfortunate set of circumstances, what I saw that day, And through my involvement, being a peer member with Virginia Law Enforcement Assistance Program, who's been a great help, I got to a point right after I retired. Sandy Hook was in 2000 and it was December 14th of 2012, and being involved in Virginia Law Enforcement Assistance Program, being involved in the Connecticut State Police STOPS program, peer support. We've heard all this morning that we're out there helping others, but yet we seem to neglect ourselves. And I had most certainly put myself in a position where I was ignoring everything that I would talk to people about that was affecting myself, until I got to a point where I started it once I retired back in 2018, started all my triggers. I started numbing it with alcohol, which led to, unfortunately, a DWI arrest after my retirement. And that was, my rock bottom. But through these programs, thank God I had the resources, and this is why they're so vital for our professions, both not only professional but personally. I was able to, and I'll throw out a plug to Chateau Recovery. I had gone there because it was time for me myself to get help, and living with PTSD is not, it's not a death sentence. Okay, it's something that we live with, but when you admit yourself that you need help, it's something that it's truly the most rewarding experience I've ever had, because programs like this keep us in check, and we are able to be successful both personally and professionally. That's all.
Thanks, Pat. That's a great entry too. Doug, you're up, my friend. You're on my screen on my left here. You're on mute, buddy.
Okay, there we go. This is my first time ever doing this, so bear with me. I just finished up with James Gearing. And everybody will listen to his podcast shows, so just bear with me. We're just. What did you ask me to do, Dar? I missed the first part you put out.
That's okay, my friend. I wanted you guys to just tell us a bit about your story and who you are and the experiences that you had that led you towards doing Trouma Behind the Badge, please.
Okay. So I'm Doug Monda. I live in Central Florida in Cocoa Beach. Former drug agent and SWAT guy in this area. And I also was a former pro triathlete and soccer player. And really what took place with me throughout my career was I was obviously run a SWAT team, and I was a sniper. Accumulation of trauma that had impacted me over the years, and injuries and mental injuries, and ultimately it just got to the point where it was too powerful, too strong for me to handle, and I ultimately tried to take my own life, put a gun to my head and pulled the trigger, and fortunately for me it didn't work. I'm still here to tell that story. And what I ended up doing is coming back to work after that, getting healthier and getting better and going back to work, and started sharing my story and getting out on the road and teaching and training guys to seek help and understand what's going on with themselves in this career. And over those years of doing that, I ended up becoming friends with the guys you see on this panel. A few of our guys aren't here today. They're working on other projects, but we've all collaborated and come together with the same common goal, is to get that message out there that, and the famous words of Sheriff John Mina, it's okay not to be okay. And so, that's why we formed Trouma Behind the Badge. And we have these amazing conversations weekly that we let people join us, and hopefully we can get them on that path of recovery and getting healthier and happier.
Thank you, my friend. I'm glad that you're still alive too. I'm glad that, you know, it's crazy. In your particular case, you fired off thousands and thousands of rounds, and that one round was the one round that counted, right?
Mm-hmm. One round, man. I just had that conversation with James. I still have it.
Yeah.
And yeah, never in my career and all my you know, like you said, Dar, man, thousands of rounds, man, but it wasn't time.
Yeah. Thanks, Doug. Raul, my friend.
Yes, sir. Doc, thanks for having me on first. I appreciate it. I'm the baby of the group, if you will. I'm not sure if I'm the baby by age, but I'm the baby of getting into this realm here. 26 years, Orlando Police Department, SWAT team, and also a TFO with the U.S. Marshals. The way my story is, you know, I was a charger, just like Doug's saying. I was, you know, running and gunning for a bunch of years. And back in 2015, when I call it my trash can. I think when I realized my trash can was kind of getting full, when an 8-year-old died in my arms. But I thought I had dealt with it. And then 2016, June 12, 2016 is when the Pulse nightclub incident happened, where that mass shooting where 49 people were killed by a radicalized guy that decided he wanted to kill people in a club. And so I was one of the SWAT guys responding to that. And OPD, Orlando Police Department, you know, they're kind of a progressive police department that they did do a good job of trying to care for us. They sent us to EAP, which I absolutely hated, you know, and we've talked about that. And then we said something. We said, hey, this isn't right. It didn't work. It's not, you know, we're not talking to them. It's just not relating. And we were able to find, at the time it was UCF Restores, which again, but the problem I had is that I was going in there and saying, you know, I'm good. I got this. I'm good. And then 6 months later, lieutenant gets shot, executed. And it was on us to go find this guy that had done this. And my dad, being a Vietnam vet, could sense something was going wrong with me, as well as a sergeant. They were the ones kind of reaching out to me. And then there came a point where me and my dad had faced off, and that was the thing that kind of let me know I need to deal with this. You know, something's wrong, and I'm not. And I started going back to counseling, and I realized that I wasn't dealing with my trash can and kind of talking about stuff. So, and then realizing that, I started telling my story a little bit, and like the guys here have told me, you know, nothing happens by mistake. Doug happened to see me talking, and that's how we kind of, you know, he brought me on board. And I've been telling everybody my story is that and this is what I always say, we have to, as first responders, you have to fight the same way you fight on the street to survive the incident that you know brought you to this mental health place. You have to fight for your mental health, and that's my message.
That's awesome. Thanks, bro.
Thank
and
you.
then go across to Rich.
Hey, Doc.
Hey, bro.
Like my counterpart said, I just want to thank you for having us on, having me on. These guys' stories are so impactful. Every time I hear them, I feel like I feel like the baby, because you know there was no one incident that brought me to where I am today. I think it was like everybody, a culmination of incidents over time. I'm currently a 20-year sergeant with the Norfolk Police Department, still active, and I run our critical incident stress management and peer support team. like I said, a culmination of experience, vast experience. I spent over 10 years in violent crimes, working gangs and homicide and cold case. So I've had my fair share of exposure, and that exposure kind of led me to, falling into the peer way of dealing with things, negative behaviors, finding myself at the end of a bottle on occasion, binge drinking, that type of behavior. And luckily for me, I had a mentor who kind of pulled me from that path and got me on the straight and narrow. Like a lot of policemen, I brought my own trash can with me when I entered the academy, and I didn't realize how full it was. So, you go back 20 years and you think that you're, this invincible person. And for the most part you are, you're physically healthy and you're mentally, on the right path. You think, and then, these exposures take their toll. It's the death by 1,000 cuts. So, and here I am, Chris Gallen, who couldn't be with us today, started this unit back in 2015, 2016, and I was able to kind of tag along with him at the same time, work on my own education, and in doing that, I was exposed to a lot of the things that I was experiencing. So that was like my own form of counseling. I've sat down with folks before, and I think I got more out of it educating myself through school and getting that master's degree in counseling, in the counseling field. So now I'm at a point where I can help people, and that's been a blessing in disguise because it's also helped me. The first year I was here, it was just unbelievable. It was like a fire hose of the people that were asking for help. And throughout the first year, I don't even think the guys know this, but right after we had done a major debrief for the incident here in Virginia Beach, I received a phone call with a kidney cancer diagnosis. So having to stay resilient, with that, as well as, keep my game face on for these, people that have been exposed to the trauma, but it's put me in a great place. I'm able to talk about it. I'm healthy. That's the plus. We were able to get to it early. We were able to get to doing what I'm, get treatment and do what I had to do and still maintain the positive attitude that I got, I guess.
Is that why you're bald?
No. I've always been bald, Doug.
Oh.
I'm bald because of poor genetics.
Oh, okay. Because I was curious, man. I was like, because you all of a sudden you lost your hair. Look, Raul was cracking up.
The razzing was going to start at some point, right?
You knew it was coming because
at some point.
I forgot everybody was on mute.
Rich, I said, what? I was gonna
And then I got a question for you. So in your master's degree, can you help Patty speak where people can understand what's coming out of his mouth?
So I am very fluent in Boston, as you can tell. I obviously did not grow up in Norfolk, Virginia. I grew up in a small suburb of Boston called Chelsea, Mass. But I'm very fluent in Northeast dialect, so I can translate for the rest of the hour or so.
I'm glad we have someone to fill in where Chris would normally lead us. Thank you, Doug. And I'm always mindful of things, but yeah.
So I like the angle you got the camera there, Pat. making you look taller too.
Oh, I do sound much taller, you know, when I'm doing these webinars. You know, before the accident, yes, it was, you know, but you know, but I'm in a better place now, and I've dealt with those things, and you know, through, you know, particularly being a member with you know, Trouma Behind the Badge, it's made me a bigger person.
But has it?
So
You know, I'm just happy to say this is my real head of hair.
Shit.
You know, for all of you guys, you know, I'm you know.
you know, in the field, you guys,
Oh damn.
we have folks that drink, of course, they self-medicate. We were talking about some of this stuff with Sean. But another thing that I've noticed too is, and Pat joked about it too, but we have people that explode in size. They put on a ton of weight. You know, those are some of the stresses. We see some folks becoming super skinny really fast. You know, they're taking on this stress, and it's affecting them in different ways. You know, I've always just been the psychologist on the panel when we do this stuff, but I want to hear from your perspective, the things that you've seen too, as it's taken a toll on people's health.
Well, you know, when it comes to people's health, when you're in a bad place and then you choose to self-medicate, yes, that does affect your weight. You go through periods of weight loss, periods of weight gain, and you know, unfortunately, I saw both. You know, the weight loss, and then once you start getting healthy again, it's important to have that weight. You get that weight. Finding it a little hard to take off myself right now, but it's, you know, it's a work in progress. You know, but it's you know, there are, besides affecting outwardly, there's a lot of stuff, you know, when we choose to internalize our emotions like this, it has such a huge impact, both, you know, physically, mentally, emotionally, you know, it's the unfortunate reality of it all.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely healthy.
I think the big thing for me was the sleep deprivation. I never realized how important sleep was to the human, because I've used to going on 3 or 4 hours. You know, that's just what I did. But then during the day, I would keep myself busy so my mind wouldn't wander. And then as soon as I would try to lay down at night, man, all those demons, those bad thoughts and everything, that's when it started rolling. So I got to notice where I was I was basically just like a zombie. So I didn't experience the weight gain. I darn sure didn't experience any weight loss. But one of the biggest things for me, I noticed, and I'm still not very good at it. I still go on about 5 hours. It's just the way I'm wired, I guess. But being retired helps. But I think that was one of the biggest things I noticed, man, was the sleep deprivation that came along with the PTSD and the anxiety and all that. It was a huge factor.
With the sleep deprivation, through my experiences, when I would find myself occupied during the day, by the time I went to bed, when it was time to unwind, all of a sudden, you know, there would be triggers, and I'd start reliving the events, and I found my mind to be racing so much, and it was keeping me awake. My heart rate was increased, the hypervigilance, every little sound. You go from being, you know, a very sound sleeper to the slightest bit of noise wakes you up. My phone would ring, and I'd be jumping out of my skin. So in lack of sleep can become very serious, particularly when you're choosing to engage in other, you know, activities, self-medication and not being healthy, so on and so forth.
You know, one of the questions that I ask my folks when I train them is, how many people here, and this is a great type A personality type of question, because people like to compete, right? And so I say, how many people here have stayed awake more than one day? And tell me what's the longest period of time you've ever stayed awake for. And so, you know, we have guys that went through SARE school, we have people that went through, you know, different types of training in the military, and they say 3 days, 4 days. I've even had one person say 5 days, okay? And you ask somebody, during that period of time, did you hear anything that wasn't there, or did you see anything that wasn't there? And almost unanimously, everybody says yes. And they could report and remember the things that they experienced that weren't real, you know, but due to a lack of sleep, they were experiencing it. And when you take into account what you guys are talking about, which is so important, and I'm sure the other panelists have things to add to it too, with the lack of sleep, your mind starts to play tricks on you. You start to believe those messages, and sometimes those messages lead us to really negative places. So I want to turn this back off to you now, and hear also from Rich, Doug, and Raul too, and the other guys as well. Do you recall that stuff happening to you, where you've been?
I was waiting for one of the other guys to go. We're all looking at each other like, who's going to talk first?
No, that's all right. Doug first.
Yeah, I'm not a big sleeper. 4 hours a night is good for me, but I hear voices on a good day, Dara, you know that. So like, I'm the wrong person to, you know, I hear things and do that kind of stuff, you know, crazy man. But I just had this conversation with James on his show a few minutes ago about the sleep deprivation, how vitally important it is. I mean, anybody knows, man, even the best built machines, Ferraris, they have to rest, they have to recover, you have to have maintenance, you've got to change fluids and tires, you know, and it's the same thing for the human body. I mean, you've got to have that sleep, and you know, you can't just come every day. Like, for example, look at a firefighter, man. Like, when do they sleep every night? All right. Do you, I mean, it's, you sleep for a few minutes, you get woke up, you sleep for a few minutes, you get woke up. That can't be a consistent, healthy thing for you. You know, and for a cop, we were just talking about, like, we used to work 12-hour shifts. So you work a 12-hour shift, and if you're a rookie, you get held over, you're working another 6 hours probably, depending on what your contract says. And how can you get out of a car and be on the phone with your kids or your wife griping, and the kid saying, Dad, I can't log on to school right now, and you know, that type of stuff. Get out of a car at a critical situation, have people screaming at you in the background, and then this police officer or firefighter has to make a life and death situational decision, and your motor's not rested, it's not thinking clear. And you know, I've been through that training, lack of sleep training, and it's brutal. But it's probably the, you know, as you've heard, you guys hear me all the time preaching about how important it is to take better care of yourself. To be healthy here will make this healthy, and vice versa. And that's probably the start. Is probably one of the most important things, is to make sure you're well rested and have proper sleep. Unfortunately, we don't live that way.
That's correct. Yeah, that's a rare piece of it, right? Is that hardly anybody fulfills that. Rich, you want to?
Yeah, I was just going to speak on that. I think the culture plays a huge role into that sleep deprivation. You know, we are a culture that doesn't want to miss out. We're a culture that feels that, you know, we are going to miss something if we're not tapped into, you know, hey, I just got off. Well, let me go work some overtime, you know, or let me work some extra duty time, you know, just in case something happens, or I can be there and I can help. Or, you know, the culture of I need to make a little extra money because I'm not financially, you know, in a good place. So I think it's a little bit of both. I think the job plays a role, and I think, you know, your ego and stuff like that also play a role into it. So, you know, the big thing is, you know, recognizing it, having that self-awareness when you're becoming depleted. I mean, there's not anybody on this panel or watching right now that would allow their computers that they're watching this on or cell phones to get below a certain battery level without trying to, find a charger. I think, as individuals, we need to do the same thing, recognize when we're depleted, and then, rejuvenate, and then come back. You're more productive that way.
Yeah, great point, man. Thank you. Raul is having some spotty internet connections.
Rich, do you got a coat on?
Yeah, it's raining. I just
So you
came
got a
in
coat
from
on,
rain.
man.
It's raining inside.
No, I mean, I just came inside. I haven't taken it off. I mean, look, Doug, everyone sees your arms, but you're in that medium shirt. I don't want to show you up.
Hey, well, Will Glover commented and said I was the pot, or
My
what's
damn,
that
my
saying?
damn
Pot calling the
gerbils
kettle
ain't
black.
working again, guys. I'm sorry.
That's all right, man. Hey, you said something just now, Rich, and I want to hop across and tease on Doug for a little bit. But Rich, you talked about working overtime, and how many guys here have worked overtime to avoid going home to your families, purposely to avoid going home to your families?
Every day.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And was it due to the chaos and the stress that you participated in creating at home?
It was almost a sense of relief when I got to work overtime, knowing that I didn't have to go home and deal with any of the stress there. It was, I welcomed it.
Yeah, it was an escape from adulting. I mean, you have your set of stressors at home, whether it be, bills, the kids, or anything else. And, you're dealing with critical situations at work. And to be quite honest with you, you just become numb to the fact that you have those responsibilities at home because you just don't want to deal with it.
Decision making. We talked about that quite a bit. It's, you're at work all day long making these radically intense decisions. And, as you guys have heard before, I would come home and pull in the driveway and sit in my car and go, man, I got to go in there and listen to this freaking chick yap at me and freaking little badass kids I had. And like, I just sit in the car, and then you get out of the car and you go in, and then, your wife says, hey, what do you want for dinner? And you're like, you're asking me what I want for dinner, man. Like, oh my God, like I cannot make another decision, period. And then if you're like Raul, or, who has 4 or 5 different wives, man, like that's
Gone again.
So.
But it's same thing for in the almost every firefighter that I know always has a day off job of some sort. And it was the same thing. I would.
Yeah, it's called being a firefighter.
Yeah. They don't pay us. They don't pay us enough to. We got to have another job. They don't pay us enough. So, but the same thing is work. Huh?
You only work 2 days a month.
It's only 10, but still got to pay us a living wage. But same thing is, not overtime, but, I would maybe head home for 5 or 10 minutes, get on my clothes. I was going to go do whatever side gig I had going, and just, so it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm. It is something that I think is common across state lines as well, if not internationally, that people are doing these things and they're avoiding what I like to call a retirement plan, which is how you put things in place to build your family. Because your family and your friends who are outside of work are the people that are going to be receiving you. They're your receiving team, right? After the negotiation is done. The negotiation period is how long you've been hostage in your job, right? And so we talk about a proper receiving team and a proper receiving plan, and how we're going to have a surrender plan for people. And I think that we don't think about that stuff enough in our professions as we go through the grind of every single day. We are just getting there, and we're trying to fulfill what our duties are, and we take on more and more responsibilities. Because as Doug was saying, hey, you know what? You're a type A personality, and you could take the pressure. You could actually perform well in a triathlon or as a pro athlete, and still yet go run a SWAT team or be part of a functioning SWAT team. But I want to ask you, Doug, with type A personalities that people experience and have within this field mostly, which are highly competitive people, they want to be right, They want to be a gunner. They want to get in charge of things, and they want to be active. They want to really have control over things. They don't like unpredictability. They obviously, not many first responders I know like change, and they're not comfortable with change, right? I like to think of it as like an autistic child, right? Is that the autism really kind of dictates, how violent a response you're going to get in terms of the spectrum that you're going to have. And so most of us, and I include myself in that category too, you could ask my wife, she'll tell you it's true. When we have change, it usually is a very difficult thing for us to transition, to have a transition across to something that is less lethal, if you will. But how are better ways that you guys have discovered for people to fulfill their adrenaline and to manage that rush, that flow, that cortisol flow, which has been depleted over time? Because the things that used to excite you in your job no longer have that threshold of excitement, right? And so you're chasing that rush. And I've seen guys, in Doug's particular position, that over-exercise and they end up suffering heart attacks and other things because they push themselves so hard. It's a competition as opposed to a form of relaxation where they exercise for de-stress purposes. I want to turn that off to you, Pat.
I try to find a healthy balance between my sitting on the couch, sleep time, and my eating time. That's what I've found has kept me level. Now, seriously though, it's you have to be able to. I wasn't joking with that, but seriously, you have to be able to find a healthy balance. While we dealt with the rush, I don't think we ever stop missing the excitement, but it's being able to find a healthy balance and keep yourself active, in a positive manner, and being able to do that was getting the proper help, which allows me to live my life amazingly every day, not dealing with the internalized anger and that bottled up depression that I had. And it's the balance. It's all about balance.
Thanks, Pat. Other folks? Doug?
Raul probably missed the question, but I'll let him piggyback off mine. Can you hear us, Raul?
I barely, man. My damn internet's cutting in and out. If you guys can hear me.
We'll have to get him a new phone. That Cricket's not working today.
Pay your bill.
I'm on my
Hey, listen, since we like to get that
man.
Have y'all noticed Dara's off restriction? He's not grounded no more. He's in his office. But so I always talk about Groundhog Day, and for me, you're right, Dara. I overdid it. I put more miles on my body than I did in my car, and that's what I needed. I grew up like that, always being an athlete, but I needed that to push myself to that limit. I almost look at it as I needed to exhaust myself, like you know what I mean, to tire myself out because I'm so high strung and high speed. But I ask a lot of people whenever I go to departments and on stage, and what happened to Raul? Is he okay? His screen froze. I always tell people you have to be of that Groundhog Day. You go to work every day. You wear the same uniform. You drive the same car. You go to the same calls. And everybody who's seen that movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, I talk about this every time I'm on stage. What's he ultimately do? He ultimately tries to kill himself because he's going crazy, because he's reliving it. And as first responders, that's what we find ourselves doing, is living that same life every day, every day, every day. And then I'll ask people like, hey, what did you do? What was your main hobby and what's your main fun function before before you became a cop or in current? Most guys, I was a hunter or a fisherman, or I golf, or I do this, that, and the other. And I would ask them, how many times are you doing it? And they go, oh man, I used to do it every weekend as much as I can. And I said, well, how many times are you doing it now? Oh, once every couple of months, because that job has become so mentally exhausting. And this happened to me the same. It became so mentally exhausting. All I could do was go home and sit on the couch and watch mindless TV, not make that decision like we talked about earlier. And I even shared that segment of what my life was currently like when I found myself in that predicament. And so the moral of the conversation I'm trying to get at is, it is imperative that whatever you used to do, mostly whatever your hobby is, whatever brings you the most joy in your life, and don't say your kids, because kids suck. I don't care what anybody says. Oh, I just want to be with my kids. Kids are like puppies. I say this every time. They're only cute for a little while. I'm talking about what you did for your personal growth and your personal enjoyment. And for me, it was, surfing and running and biking and swimming and fishing. And, I live on the beach, and I don't even walk down to the beach, because I was so, engrossed in it. I've had to change the way I do things since, my injury, but I've found new things to bring joy into my life. And I have to, you have to make a plan. You have to write it down and implement it like everything else you do in your life. And because if you don't, you're going to just live that Groundhog Day every day. You've got to bring personal joy into your life, whatever it is, whether it's go for a walk, or if it's golfing, start golfing again. If it's like Patty does, he crochets and makes scarves, and they're beautiful scarves. Do that type of stuff. Chris has tigers. I mean, who the hell has freaking tigers? Whatever it is, go pet your tigers. So for the people listening, this is what we do to each other every week. This is how we handle dealing with trauma. Yeah, you think we do this all the time, and we're always talking about trauma and stuff. So we try to bring some joy to it, make each other laugh and pick on each other. That's just the way we do with it. We really do love each other, man. All of us, we're a great team. And we do make sure that we make sure that everybody else is okay. So if you see your friends and coworkers and colleagues and family members, that are getting in that rut, it's important that you get them out there, and change that monotony. It's simple as when you get home from work, at least go for a walk around the block before, you get into your nightly duties to break that monotony up.
That's a great.
Right. And I think it's I was going to say, Doug always talks about it. I think it's important. We're self-aware. We know ourselves. It's important when you notice that when you're not doing the things that you used to enjoy doing, that's a pretty good sign that maybe something isn't, like it's supposed to be in your heart or in your mind. So when you notice that you're pulling away from the activities that used to bring you, great joy, which my kids were part of mine, coaching my kids, that stuff, I just started kind of pulling away from. Important to notice that, and there's got to be a reason for that. You just don't do it. And it's important as first responders that we look out. We got to take care of ourselves, because nobody else is going to do it. So like Doug said, that was a big thing for me, watching guys and girls that I was in charge of at the station or certain sections, to notice notice a change in them, and like their work habits, or the guy I used to call to go play golf, all of a sudden he never wants to go anymore. And it's important to keep an eye on things like that, and check on each other.
Yeah, and I want to add too, for the retirees who may be on here, like sometimes I've had retirees tell me, I don't want to go play golf with those people, because every time we go, they talk about gripes and aches and pains that they have, or gripes with the department, and they talk about negative stuff. And so I want to avoid the retiree pool. Yet still we have retirees that are killing themselves at alarming rates. And so how do we, because, you know, we had a question that came in here saying, how many folks here are still active law enforcement or active first responders as opposed to retirees? And you guys could put your hands up for that particular piece, right? But what I think is important is to think about too, for you guys that had transitioned to retirement, how did you keep community and still try to maintain your mental health and wellness while having, how did you find your camaraderie, your tribe that Dan Antrim talked about today?
That's pretty cool. I mean, that's
Yeah.
a good question. You know, and he is right. I have moments where, you know, I go meet with my SWAT team guys and my drug agent guys, and usually for lunch, and it does, and they do. All they can do is talk about work and stuff like that. But that's where communication comes into play, where you go, hey guys, let's go golfing, but no work talk at all, man. And, you know, be honest and go, I can't take it right now, man. I don't want to hear it. And I tell Karen all the time, she's like, hey, why don't you go with the guys? And I'm like, man, just not tonight. I don't want to hear about it. I don't, you know, want to be in that. And then kind of the plus for us is our team, including you, Dar, we get to communicate with each other on different levels. And that's why I was saying earlier, why we tease each other and joke around. And, you know, so we do have that camaraderie for the retirement. I mean, we're retired, some of us, but we're still active. I mean, we still work in the community and teach, so we get little bits and drabs of it. But it's important to just communicate and to have an after plan too as well. Was it, Dar, when we were in Phoenix on the walk, wasn't it Phoenix or Tucson that had the fire trucks in that they remodel?
Yeah, I believe you're right. I think it was Tucson.
That's a great program, you know, you know, something like that. But you've got to, I mean, you've got to have that camaraderie and that after plan, because the retirement thing is a dangerous tool that nobody talks about. Most people just assume, Rich, you agree? Like most people assume that it's the work environment. You know, Karen Solomon would probably be the best person to answer that question, you know, like the data, the statistics behind that. You know, I think it's an alarming number of how many retirees commit suicide because they just, you know, you spend your whole life in work mode and then all of a sudden life's changing.
I think the report on that from Blue Help is about 13%, if I'm not mistaken, right, Rich?
Right. And so to kind of play off of what Doug was talking about, you know, having these hobbies and having these outlets, these healthy outlets, is you know, being in the academy setting, because that's where my my units run out of. I have the ability to tap into the recruits at a very basically from the beginning, and kind of remind them not to lose who they are, because we have a tendency of doing that. You know, we become the job, we become, you know, everything, the hypervigilance, everything else. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have that in our lives, but if we become overly consumed by it, you know, you blink and 25 years has gone by, and that's all you know is to be a cop or to be a firefighter or, you know, be a first responder, and you don't know anything else. So my biggest thing is I just try to tell people, never lose sight of the person you were before you took that oath. Because when you do, that's when you can kind of go down that slippery slope.
Right.
Dara, I'm interested to hear what your thought behind that is. Obviously, you always have such words of wisdom, like, you know, is that a medical, you know, you spend 25 years, let's just say 20 years, you know, I mean, 10 years is a freaking long time, man. You know, does the brain reprogram itself? I mean, because I know when Karen comes home from work, she wants to school teacher me every day. You know what I mean? Does the Publix or the grocery store deli, you know, does the brain reprogram after 20 years? You know, after making sub sandwiches for 20 years, you know, what do you do?
You know,
Oh, you failed to mention your wife is a kindergarten teacher, so that may have something to do with it.
which was very appropriate, right? When Wendy Shackelford had said, let's face it, we don't always marry the best people for our own health. But in Doug's case, he needed a kindergarten teacher.
I did, man. God bless her, man. Oh, y'all kiss my ass too.
Just pointing the fact out.
I actually think you don't even need to wait 20 years. You know, think about the first trauma that you encountered on your job, you know, and how your brain started to reprogram from that first trauma that you saw. You know, Dan was talking about playing football with a real foot, you know, overseas, and then seeing human remains. Worse yet, if the human remains are one of your own buddies that, or somebody who shares your outfit, that you responded to a call, and we could think of many of those, and you guys have been part of it, where, you know, you were not able to help. And so that feeling of helplessness has really stuck with you, in addition to the actual trauma that you're seeing and witnessing and being part of. So it may not even take 20 years. I think that you could actually have your brain start to change after a very short period of time on a job, and is dependent upon experience and circumstance. Would you guys agree?
Yeah,
Totally.
I mean, you could definitely see the difference, you know, especially having the experience as an academy instructor, you know, going back 5-6 years ago, and having conversations with the same people that were recruits in my class, and seeing them now, and the complete change and the stuff that they were warned about. You know, they slowly fall into those traps, and luckily with relationship building, you know, they're able to reach out and you know, kind of say, hey, I know you told me so, but can you tell me again?
Yeah. Yeah, and I hear from Chris and Pat, I'm seeing yeses and nods too. I want to get a couple questions that we have here, and then I have a couple more comments too. But so we have Daniel Torres, who says, definitely get this sleep deprivation thing. The 21 years retired Army MP and Ranger school graduate. I was taught that the body only needs 3 hours of sleep to be able to function properly, and pseudo, suck it up and drive on. It's hard to let go of that mentality. How did you guys do it?
I'm trying to answer questions, Dar. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I guess, you know, like I said, it's the culture. You know, if you let yourself, sometimes it's not a bad thing to kind of go against what people think is the norm, because, you know, physiologically speaking, you don't function your best on 3 hours of sleep, whether you think you do or not. You know, especially in the decision-making process.
I want to welcome our friend Chris Scallon. There's that good-looking schmuck.
How you doing?
I would use that term loosely.
What's going on?
Hey, this is a nice surprise. I thought that you were going to be actually in training for the whole day, so thanks for taking time to hop on, man.
Sure, no, absolutely. Wouldn't miss it.
No, that's so awesome. Well, of course, we lost Raul because he was stealing.
Oh, no.
Dude, Chris.
He was stealing Ethernet.
He's on a flip phone.
You got a fact line? Dude, this does nothing for the rest of the shows that we do with him.
You would think he would get it together for this one, right?
I guess we're gonna have to like buy him some equipment or something, man.
So somebody asked here, what resources does Behind the Badge have, or Trauma Behind the Badge have for officers who are suffering themselves and experiencing the trauma of a coworker's suicide?
Chris, you answer that one, man.
Yeah, sure. So there's our response is both to the individual and the agency and the spouses or the support network of any kind of response. So we want to be able to cover the response as, like I always say this, but like on the spectrum. Do I need to have somebody face to face that just wants to unwind or just cathartically vent, you know, everything that's on their mind? Or do I have somebody that has responded to this so adversely that we need to provide inpatient services? or maybe they don't reach that level and maybe they can just do intensive outpatient services, or they could benefit from any number of post-critical incident seminars that we have throughout the country in all different states. So it really is, we don't respond to the response of an incident to an incident itself, but rather the response to an incident. Because we never, and Dar, you know this, and everybody here knows this, we never want to force ourselves in front of somebody that's in crisis. we don't want to do that. We want to stand at the sideline and have them know that we're available. And when they talk with us, they're not going to get, well, this company, told me that I should say them and promote this. We don't do that. There's not a place or service or resource that we don't provide or kind of point to that we haven't personally vetted ourselves, either personally or through coworkers, and just, we have a really stringent vetting process, and we wouldn't ever want to do that because first responders have a really short window of opportunity where if they ask for help, if they need help, if you don't provide it, then never reach out again.
So true, Chris. And I want to say that, you didn't talk about this, but your company, Survival Mindset Consulting, Doug's company, Survive First, other guys here may have their other companies that they're working to that you guys can say their names. I know when I reach out to you and we are trying to get somebody help, we all respond in a big circle to say, okay, who's been here, who's been there, who knows this person, who knows that person? Is this a good place? Do we trust this person? Trust is a big deal, right? That's a common thread. And so, and I know there have been times, Chris, that I've had to call you, Scallon, where I said, hey, Chris, I have a guy here and he needs a pair. Can you help me out? And you're like, anytime.
Yeah.
And you guys would pick up that call.
So I know I pick up the call. And listen, I don't know if Doug's mentioned this. In the last 48 hours, Survive First has got 2 first responders into services.
Awesome.
3 first responders. I'm just talking about the ones that I know personally. So my phone call is to Doug for some of the support that the nonprofits do. But the majority of the stuff that we all deal with, and I know Rich does, and Patty's been a great advocate, and Doug does, is if you call us, we're not passing you off. We're going to engage with you. I'm going to find out everything that we need to know so that you're not having to retell your story 15 times.
Yeah.
And so that personal kind of interaction, no one's doing anymore. I don't know why. And it pays, pays dividends.
Yeah, it surely does. Chris, in the beginning, and I know you came on because you had other stuff going on, I asked folks very briefly to talk about their own story. I don't want people to miss your story because your story is just as impactful as everybody else's. You mind giving us a 2-minute spiel on that? I know we're going to run up to time here.
I grew up in a very violent, with the violent surroundings where I lost close family members to violence, both gangs and otherwise. I worked as a firefighter and a medic in New York, and then went to the Navy, left the Navy after being involved in an accident, and which resulted in a traumatic brain injury. That was diagnosed 20 years later, and then retired from the Norfolk Police Department in Virginia about 2 years ago, I think it is. And now all I do is work with first responders and vets. But in 2007, I was involved in my 7th and last shooting, knock on wood, and the wheels fell off. As a result, I was diagnosed with PTSD, depression with suicidal ideations, and the traumatic brain injury. As a result, I attempted suicide 3 times while I was a police officer. And I kind of got sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I said, after I got promoted, I said, this is just complaining. And complaining for complaining's sake is doing nothing. So I was like, what can I do to bring this to the forefront? And I created a peer support program, which, we got it through the door. I made my case for it, a critical incident stress management and peer support unit, which I modeled after Boston and San Francisco's behavioral sciences unit. And then just as soon as I got things kind of almost there, it was time for me to retire. And I'm like, who is the biggest idiot that I could take to take my spot that has no idea how horrific it is going to be telling captains and chiefs that, no, you can't know this. You want to know this, but you don't need to know that. And I was like, who's dumb enough to do it? I was like, I'm sure there's a kid from Boston that would come out here and so that's how I brought Rich Creamer into the fold and threw him under the bus. But that's my story. But to his credit, he has taken that unit to places I wasn't even imagining. Even having a full-time service dog that kind of goes around, and now the health aspect of it, which I'm a big proponent of. Nothing to me is more important than being healthy. Healthy here. Healthy here.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, Doug was just talking about that earlier. Hey, I want to ask you guys. We'll chat for a few more minutes here. We're over on our slot, but we still have time on the wrap-up period here. So I want to use some of this time because I think this is very important. And sometimes we run over on a show too because things just have to keep going. I want to ask you all. I'm going to be doing a segment with a guy here on September 30th, where we're going to have conversation about. People sometimes don't feel like they qualify for post-traumatic stress because they haven't been in a shooting. They haven't been to an Oklahoma City or to a Sandy Hook shooting. And so they feel, well, I'm not worthy of having post-traumatic stress because I haven't experienced any of that stuff. I'm your run-of-the-mill cop that, as Rich said, it died by 1,000 paper cuts, and I picked this up. I want people to know that, number one, that you can develop post-traumatic stress over the 1,000 paper cuts, but to hear from your perspective too on that, if you can. You guys could take that away.
I always tell everybody, stress on a 1 to 10, a 10 is a 10. Doesn't matter if you're a school teacher or you're a firefighter or you're a cop or a librarian. Stress on a 1 to 10. You don't have to be, in those, to have the kind of stories that we have. That's not it. And we could probably sit here and dissect them, all to it. I'm a strong believer, the totality of circumstances, that I went through because, the shootings and stuff, they're exciting. I have that sick part of me that's like, hey, yeah, you guys want to get in a gunfight? Man, that's my kind of party, man. Let's go. But, stick me in a room with 3 cats, a school teacher, and a kid, and I'm jumping off a cliff. You know what I mean? So that stress right there is enough. So, I would say, don't sell yourself short thinking, oh, well, how could I have PTSD? I'm just this, or, we talked about that on our show with Kevin Heath. Remember the story where he's the state trooper and he goes, oh, I'm just a ticket rider. No, you're not just a ticket rider. So don't ever sell yourself short thinking that or so to speak, or if that's the right terminology, that you might have post-traumatic stress or some sort of critical incident happen to you in your life. Like I'm watching my wife pet a cat and it's freaking me out, man. I'm about to just lose it.
Well, I think the other big thing is usually those critical incidents are just the catalyst. That you got everything already spilling over, and then you get involved in a critical incident, and that's where reaching out allows you to get to that root cause of what the real problem is.
Another really significant point that I see in groups all the time, and I just spent the last week doing group work with a bunch of first responders. Everybody that talks about trauma in a group setting doesn't believe they need to be there because they're comparing their trauma to somebody else. I had an officer who had witnessed several individuals throughout the month, and not this recent one, but like years ago, throughout the month had seen several people die in vehicle accidents where they died as a result of fire. And then they had another individual that was involved in a shooting, pretty upfront shooting. There wasn't nothing about it. And the officer that saw the people said, hey, I don't belong here. I said, what do you mean you don't belong here? Well, I haven't killed anybody, or I haven't, shot, been in a shooting. I said, I would rather be in a shooting than be exposed to all those dead bodies. Like we have a tendency to compare so that we can gauge to where we're at. And I make this final point. I know I'm probably taking too much time, but me and a buddy of mine, both in the military, are setting up appointments to go to the VA to get benefits. And for the longest time, I kept on saying, who am I to get benefits? I have all my limbs. I can think for the most part, right? I can see kind of. I don't want to take away from the real, these combat vets that are coming home in pieces. That's not what it's there for. So I'm gauging the help I need by how bad somebody else needs help too. The help is help. I don't care how you get it or where you think you're at. And here's the beauty of it. You don't have to wait till the wheels fall off to get help.
Amen.
You don't have to be at that place. It's much easier. And I say this when I first started, if I want somebody to come to me and say, hey, listen, I got a problem with this outlet in my house. That's a $2 fix, as opposed to, going to somebody and they're actively hallucinating, right, on the ground in a fetal position, and they've just snorted a 30-day prescription of Adderall in 7 days, and 7 captains are standing around trying to figure out what's going on with this guy. We don't have to let it get to that. So.
Totally agree, man. Thank you. And I know that we don't have a lot more time here, but as we always do, and Doug and you usually lead, but I want to ask if you guys have any parting words of wisdom for folks. I want to encourage everybody here to explore Trauma Behind the Badge. There's so many more questions we could discuss. There's so many more topics that we have left to discuss, but we can't do it all here. I do want to read a couple comments for you before we do that. In Ohio, we have Ohio Assistant in Ohio. The bridge that works with Blue Health, they offer 3-day retreats covered except for travel. And so that's a comment that was made here and from Joyce, and I don't know if folks know about that, but we could follow up on that via the text if we can on chat, if you guys don't mind texting back on that. And then I've got 2 teammates, close friends, that were in a shooting and killed a suspect. Anyway, they both now act like they are invincible. Their officer safety is diminishing. And it's like they're looking for another shooting. How do I intervene before they get hurt? That's huge, right? Because you guys have seen that. You probably felt that way too at times. And yet still we know that the danger lies in complacency, right?
Yeah, Rich and we had an officer in our agency involved in a shooting, became emboldened, and unfortunately he was killed.
Yeah. Yeah, that one I'm also gonna let you guys type to that one as well if you can, so that way we could start doing our wrap up. That was Shane, so we could look out for Shane on that one. And what I'm gonna do here, thank you guys, is just to spend a minute and give us your words of wisdom. Pat, I'll start with you. You're up in my left corner.
Thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to speak today. Just keep up the good work, get help if you need it. There are resources out there. Don't be ashamed to ask for them. And, like Chris said, there's no need for the wheels to fall off before we either, on our own decide to get our own help or, willing to help someone else.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Doug?
I'm going to touch on the trauma behind the badge component. I don't know if you did earlier, Dar, but just so everybody's clear on what we do, like we're connected with several amazing resources throughout the U.S. and we've collaborated with all the best of the best out there to provide the resources and obviously our experience and knowledge to share it. When we all came together and built Trauma Behind the Badge, our main goal was to, what we all realized, and we work together and we travel together, and the best conversations that we have are in the back parking lots of the police departments and the fire stations. And that's where we communicate the best. So we decided that we were going to bring that platform to, virtually, so we could have these conversations. And that's what we do every week. So don't anybody feel that they, that they're not welcome, or, come on and share with us. Obviously you can, find us at traumabehindthebadge.com. And we'll do whatever we can to point you in the right direction or provide the right resources. This is a start. I mean, Dara, what you've done is amazing. You know, for all these people, man, to hear these messages and the story. Unfortunately, you know, we've been tied up on some projects, so we didn't get to spend much more time with everybody. But we're always available, man. We're just a phone call away. Hey, Chris, all our numbers are on the website, right? Currently, Jen put them on, so anybody can contact us. Dara's on the page with it as well. He's part of this team. So we have it all available for anybody that needs to contact us. And Jen just posted it on the screen again. So thanks for inviting me. I'm honored. I'm sorry I was late, but you know, I'm here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Thank you, brother. Rich?
Just to kind of echo what the thank you, just for the opportunity, Dara. You know, you don't get to reach an audience like this all the time, and make these stories come to light to where people realize that they're not alone. So my biggest thing is just remember, check your ego at the door and reach out for help.
Well said, Rich. Thank you. Thanks for being here too. Chris Scallon?
Yeah, if you need something, reach out to Trouma Behind the Badge. All our links are there. Are you in the office?
Yeah.
Ooh. I thought I knew that thing that we stuck up in the tile. Ah, nice. No, well, I do want one last parting thing. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it, is, you know, a lot of people are struggling out there. And we want to make sure, and Doc, you do such a great job putting people in front of resources and resources in front of people. But recently, in the past several months, I've seen one of the most horrific things that I've ever experienced in my entire life. And that's poor cell phone coverage for Raul. He is struggled to maintain a package or steal Wi-Fi. So we're going to try to start a GoFundMe page on Trouma Behind the Badge, and call it maybe Trouma Behind the Cell or something. I don't know.
I was thinking the GoFundMe, and Doug, they do make animals for men. It's called the dog. You're good, okay? You know,
Awesome.
I think you're jealous of the cat, you know, with your wife, but get yourself a dog, kid. Everything's okay.
One quick thing, and I don't know if it was mentioned, I was seeing some stuff there. When Trouma Behind the Badge, and we have a new flyer that's going to be coming out, but dispatcher, spouses, forensic units that are sworn or non-sworn, all those folks kind of get pushed by the wayside, and they're just as much a first responder as the next person. So just want to throw that out.
Hey, don't we have a dispatchers segment coming up on the calendar?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, we're all big fans, and we know dispatchers get shoved to it, and we just talked about them on the show a couple weeks ago, man. So
real quick on that, as a fellow dispatcher, I started as an emergency dispatcher before I became a trooper, and now I'm back to dispatching with the Foster Rhode Island Police Department. An amazing group to work with there. But what people don't understand is dispatchers are the first line. They receive that call. They are part of the first responder team. And while we, as boots on the ground, whether it be, you know, law enforcement or the fire service or EMS, when the call's done, we grab a coffee, or you know, we'll take a break, we'll have lunch. What I don't think people realize is a dispatcher, they sit in that chair and they're forgotten at sometimes. You know, the calls that they take, they have to listen to it. Where is their outlet? When does someone ask, hey, how are you doing? Do you need a break after that call? Because it doesn't happen. They sit there and the next call comes in.
And there's no closure.
There is no closure. You know, we're worrying about listening to a victim on the other line just as much as feeling responsible to dispatching out, whether it be a law enforcement dispatch or fire and EMS. We're wondering, did we get all the proper information? You know, are they safe out there? Because we all know a lot of stuff that comes over the line when the call comes in isn't necessarily what we respond to when we go to that door, particularly nowadays with stuff. So there's a lot that weighs on a dispatcher's mind. So I feel it's very important to have the dispatcher included in our conversations.
I do too, and I would also offer a word of advice for guys too after being in the field for quite some time is, the dispatchers worry a lot about the officers that they are dispatching to the calls, and it would mean the world to the dispatchers. I'll speak on behalf of dispatchers. If the officers, if they're involved in a critical incident, they come back to the station maybe at some point and show face. That goes such a long way with the dispatchers to say, hey, you know what, thanks so much, we're good. And just that little visual of seeing the cop that was on the street means the world to dispatchers. So that all that stuff helps in really trying to help with that closure. So Pat, I appreciate you talking about your experience in that as a dispatcher, because they are first responders.
We're responsible. We feel responsible. We have a young man who just joined the police department. First time law enforcement career, and sending him to a domestic call that was a really hot call. I'm thinking where I was as a young trooper through 20 years of experience, how I would have reacted, what I would have done. Are you having trouble seeing the dog ears with Chris, or are you going to ask me a question, Doug?
Yeah, I couldn't hear what you said. Did you say trooper? Or a blooper? Grouper?
Yeah, no, it's
Trooper.
Yeah, we call them troopers.
Big trooper.
It's a trooper, Doug.
I'm concerned for this new kid, through my training experience, and dispatchers, this is what we deal with. Are our personnel out there who are doing the work on the front line, are they safe? Did we get all that proper information for them?
So I'll tell you what we'll do. We have to wrap up, but what I'll do is I had questions revolving around when the dispatcher segment is. If you guys who have an interest in that particular segment, hopefully all of you do, could log on to Trouma Behind the Badge. It's going to be updated by the segments to see when different people are coming on, right? Chris and Doug, you guys have that up there.
Yeah, they just checked the website, and they could join the Facebook group. We put out the schedule way in advance, and we have the dispatcher coming on. And again, we're open to suggestions. So if somebody wants to see something, contact John Behind the Badge, and we'll put it on.
I think Jen might be able to post it before we log off if she's in the background with the calendar. But that's your gig, Patty, isn't it? Coming up soon
For
the dispatcher thing we're going to do, the series.
Sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Let me know.
Mm-hmm.
So Pat handles all the dispatchers. He's a good because he don't like to wear pants, so he can sit behind the desk and.
Well, he spends most of the time. He spends most of the time on the panel answering calls for service or taking calls.
I didn't realize that we were so focused on ourselves here. Are we supposed to be getting the message out to the attendees here? Let's stick with the program, guys. Stay focused.
Hey, Patty, what kind of book do you sit on?
Oh, we already went through I'm Taller on the radio.
All right, I'm sorry.
We already went through. Yeah, we beat that horse.
Well, guys, you guys
I got 2 dictionaries, Webster's.
Fun group to work with every single week, and I appreciate having you guys. Thank you for being part of the program today, and for helping us to close out on such a positive note. Hope is available. Hope is possible. Help is available, and you have a bunch of us that are willing to do that. And we are just a small group of people that you see on a screen, but there's so many more people in peer support programs in other areas that you could reach out to and try to get direct help from. People care. Just find the right person. We were talking about culturally competent therapists last week on the program, and how do we separate the employee assistance program folks from the competent culturally people that could offer these services. Don't give up. Keep looking. Keep asking questions. When you want to find a therapist, ask someone, Have you ever worked with first responders before? What is your experience with dispatchers? What's your experience with forensic technicians? Don't be afraid to ask those types of questions when you want to vet your mental health responder, because they need to be held accountable too for their ability to be able to serve you. That's what we do on the behavioral health side. I want to talk about a few things here as we wrap up as well. Number one, go to BluePaz website. You could find links for LinkedIn as well as Facebook. I have upcoming trainings that I'll be doing, and I'm going to start doing one at least once a month. Our first one coming up for a live stream is going to be with Sergeant Dan Green from Chandler Police Department. And we're going to talk about that death by 1,000 paper cuts as opposed to having a traumatic event, and how that shaped his career and his life as a CIT officer, as a peer support team member as well. I'll put details on those things for you guys. I also want you to be aware that I'm going to send an email out to everybody who participated in our conference sessions from last Friday, and this Friday is going to contain a couple things. One of the things is going to be an evaluation form I want you to complete, and if you would take the time to do so, we want to get feedback to see how we can grow. The second piece of that is going to be ideas for future conferences that you would like to see. Every conference, we have a different flavor. In fact, we've had Doug and Chris before, which has been great. And I'm glad that we're doing this stuff again, and hopefully we can continue doing it. But let us know what else you guys want to hear and what else would be beneficial to you and to your agencies. I want to thank all of our sponsors once again. Without them, honestly, I mean, we really could not do this program for free and bring it to the world. You know, these folks here have stepped up, and they have put everything out there so that way families and first responders could get help and get healthy. So, you know, Chateau Recovery works directly with Trouma Behind the Badge and puts this on every week. Buena Vista Health and Recovery Centers, Lighthouse Health and Wellness. You guys saw Joe today, as well as Oasis Behavioral Health with Tiffany, the Brain Injury Alliance of Arizona, and of course we have MPAC Suicide Prevention Center, who has really put on the lion's share of this. So I will stay and keep this program running, but I know that if people need to leave, they can. I'll also offer all of the participants here who are the attendees, if you need to talk with me because some of this stuff was too heavy, or any of our team here, we will stand by and we'll stay on, so that way you could chat with us, or we could give you our information if you need to follow up.